RNC, the old RNC, the establishment RNC, the RNC of Mitt Romney, not the RNC of Donald Trump. Go ahead.
Long strange trip it's been, Steve. You said on your Not a Podcast today that the fight would continue from November 5th to Inauguration Day,
yes,
with January 6th being a key part of that.
Yes.
So are you planning an encore from the last
No,
January
Jamie
6th?
Raskin, I think, Tim, what you ought to focus on is Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin saying right now, if they take the House by one seat, that they will go back to their committee report and they will say President Trump's an insurrectionist, that Bannon went to prison, Navarro went to prison, President Trump's been indicted, and they will sit there and go, hey, the Supreme Court may have issued a 9-0 opinion about him being on the ballot, but it doesn't mean we have to sit him as president. This is what they're thinking up right now. Nancy Pelosi gave an interview to Rolling Stone magazine. She said her number one priority is to make sure that Donald Trump is not only not elected, a re-elected president of the United States, but he never sets foot in the White House. Nancy Pelosi and Jamie Raskin right now are thinking about, and they're very open about it, of not certifying a Trump victory on November 5th. And that's not me saying, that's Jamie Raskin saying.
What is the Kamala Harris victory? What are your plans for after November 5th with the Kamala Harris victory for ballot box?
We are going to make sure that Kamala Harris doesn't win on November 5th. Yes. We're highly confident. We've seen the polls. You've seen the numbers coming in. We're going to look. We believe in the American system of democracy. We believe that, and the reason we like democracy, we're winning, right? And we're going to win on November 5th.
So I do just wonder then, if you're
But you do agree with me on Jamie Raskin, that Jamie Raskin's already said that.
I don't agree with that. I do wonder, though, you were teaching civics, you're out of prison. I wonder if you're a reformed, looking back on the last January 6th and the fact that you incited a mob that ended up resulting in police being injured. I just wonder if you reflected on that. Maybe you reflected on that. You might want to change your plan.
If you look at what we said, is that as the states requested, 7 states requested, never got to.
You saw the outcome and you reflected on it.
A full review. This is because Vice President Pence didn't handle it correctly. This is because Vice President Pence did not handle it correctly.
No change.
No, absolutely no change. For the simple reason is that we should have had a review as requested by the states for all 7 states at that time. Tim, thank you very
Just
much.
one question at a time, okay?
But Tim, if you want to continue
I have one more. Has President Trump
television.
called you since you got out of prison? I got one more.
I don't want to talk about personal conversations, but we've had a chat.
You have talked with former President Trump this morning.
We've had a chat.
Have you talked about Election Day coming up?
I don't want to discuss what we're talking about, but by the way, he watches the show. He saw the show this morning. The show this morning didn't talk about my time in prison. What it talked about was 2 things. Number one, a massive grassroots effort that's underway that has to culminate on November 5th, particularly in places like Pennsylvania. It looks like max 15% of Republicans will have voted on the mail-in ballot, early voting. Before then, we have to deliver 85% of the people to the polls next Tuesday. He understands that we're the focus and back of people like the Elon Musk of the world and the money he's putting in for his effort, and Charlie Kirk and other independent groups out there that are putting in, that we're driving and lightening the grassroots movement of the Trump MAGA movement to show up next week. That's number one. And number 2, we had Bill McGinley and Mike Davis and others on to talk about the election integrity, the efforts that they're making, and quite frankly, places like Pennsylvania, that looks like the election administration is a little bit of a dumpster fire right now.
4 years ago, you urged then President Trump to declare victory on election night, when you knew all well that there was going to be a decent chance that we would not know because ballots had yet to be counted. You went out and did exactly that, and you urged him to do the same thing on this election night.
Hang on a second. When I said that 4 years ago, it was, why did I say that? Why did I say that? Because a guy named Mark Elias came up with a report that 2 individuals, Bill McGinley and Raheem Kassam, helped deconstruct in July of 2020. And he walked through how the Democrat Party was going to steal the election with illegitimate mail-in ballots.
They were not illegitimate ballots. They were mail ballots that American voters cast.
By the way, we can argue, we can adjudicate that. Hang on. We can argue that. We can argue that President Trump came up at 2:30 in the morning and talked. He should have done it at 11 o'clock at night in 2020.
Are you urging him to do the same thing?
I'm urging President Trump, if the votes come in like it looks like they're going to come in, He should step up and inform the American citizens of exactly what's going on and not keep people in the dark like was done in 2020. So President Trump should step up and walk people through state by state of where these leads are and how these leads came about. We're not prepared. We're not prepared to have in the dark of night all the problems that happened last time. Okay, the 2020 election was stolen. Okay, I will never back off that.
And we know that you wanted him to stay on as president. We know that you wanted the election.
I didn't want that. What I wanted was I wanted the will of the American people at the ballot box to be effectuated. I want the will of the American people at the ballot box to be effectuated.
Steve,
that's what I want.
Steve,
Robbie Roadsteamer here. I'm wondering when's the next insurrection, and can we storm the Burger King after this? Like, can we do that? I mean, doesn't he look great now? We were in Danbury the first month together. He looks great. You don't remember me? We were lifting weights and stuff in the weight room. When's the next insurrection? How are we going to do this and stuff, man? It wonderful. I'm leaving. I'm having a good time. He looks like Yoda with AIDS right now. Robbie Rhodes, Stephen, no political violence, people. This place smells like mob.
Thank you. Harry Lam Davies. Mr. Bannon, in 2023, you called Elon Musk a running dog for the greatest enemy in China that America has ever had. You called him a war profiteer who's sleeping with the enemy and a globalist who would take a check from Adolf Hitler himself. I want to know whether you stand by all that today.
Elon Musk, as you know, Tulsi Gabbard was a Democrat. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was a Democrat. Elon Musk was a very progressive Democrat. They've all become awakened by the MAGA movement. Today, I think he's one of the strongest supporters of the MAGA movement. He's gone through a awakening that I think very few have come. I totally disagree with many of his positions, particularly about the Chinese Communist Party and others. But as an American, he has done, I think, something very smart, and that is put money in back of grassroots organizations and people to do something simple.
So you don't
and that's to get out the vote here in the 2024 election.
So you don't mind someone who would take a check from Adolf Hitler as long as he supports Donald Trump?
No, what I said is he's gone through a great awakening, right? And I think if you talk to him, he has gone through a great awakening. And I think part of that awakening is understand the power of the MAGA movement and the power of grassroots America.
I understand. Please identify yourself. What do you ask?
Sure, it's Timmy Patriolo with Politico. I'm not sure if you saw, but the mayor got indicted while you were away, and there have been members of his legal team who say that his best bet is for a Trump presidency to succeed, and then Trump to pardon the mayor. I'm curious, what can you share?
I'll repeat the question so people can hear it. So this is a question about Eric Adams?
About Eric Adams.
About Trump's. I have no idea about.
You no idea?
Well, not about that. I don't see what Eric Adams has been charged with, but I don't think.
Do you think Trump would be amenable to helping Eric Adams?
I have no earthly idea about that. And all I know is President Trump thinks that New York City, this metropolitan area, is in deep trouble, right? Rising crime. The streets are filthy. I think President Trump has not been a supporter of things dealing with Eric Adams, Mayor Adams' administration. So I don't know. You should ask President Trump that.
Steve, Andrew writes from New York Magazine. What are you going to do over the next? You've got 6 days. You're out now. You've got 6 days between now and the election, and then maybe some period afterwards in which this will be still at stake. What are you going to be doing during those days besides the war room?
Well, there's a lot of different options. I'm of a strong belief right now. This is New York Magazine asking me what myself and Warren's going to do. Obviously, with 7 days or 6 days left, you have to have a convergence of the get out the vote effort. I am not a huge believer in our ability to actually participate in rallies or do rallies, because right now I think President Trump does that great, and he has people along that are going to do rallies in the different states. Our focus is one thing: to make sure that we get as many American citizens either early voting while they can or to the polls next Tuesday. And so our efforts are how to scale that effort like we did today on the show and other efforts behind the scenes. So our thing is to make sure that we're there to scale the vote up, get at the vote operations, and also on the election integrity. Today we had Bill McGinley, one of the senior lawyers on there, and he's still calling for volunteers. I think there's been 200,000 election integrity volunteers. We need to get people in the counting rooms. We need to get people around the tables to do ballot curing. Okay, so there's still need for that, so we're going to call for that. So our efforts are on the election integrity efforts, where we can be supportive,
and then get out the vote. Yes, sir.
Hey, Peter Harrell on ABC News. If the election is declared in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris, what exactly do you believe former President Donald Trump should do in the following 2 months? Will you unequivocally condemn political violence?
Hang on. Who believes in political violence? That's a loaded question. Of course people don't believe in political violence. I was just a political prisoner of a regime that put somebody in prison for what has been a civil charge at the history of the country. I think, I've been told I'm the only misdemeanor that's ever been at Danbury Prison. I think I'm the only misdemeanor. They told me when I was on trial in federal court in D.C. that I'm the first misdemeanor at a federal level. You know, CNN reported that wrong the other day. I'm not guilty of a felony. That was a misdemeanor. So, listen, we have to go through this election. And whoever wins the election, wins the election. Okay? I think we can show we're pretty powerful in opposition. Right? So if whoever wins, wins. But I can tell you right now, it's not Trump that's hiring Mark Elias. It's not Trump going to the mattresses about election integrity right now. It is Kamala Harris's campaign. And why is she doing that? Because the politics of joy was an epic fail. Now, why was it an epic fail? Because she couldn't take the narrative and actually put together a coherent set of policies that people could understand. And so she's pivoted. She's pivoted worse than Hillary Clinton. She doesn't call people deplorable, she calls them fascist. This rhetoric is dangerous. It's dangerous, and all they're doing is ratcheting it up. And you're going to see the working class people in this country, the middle class people in this country, that are in back of the greatest political comeback in American political history, are going to say, whoever wins this election, wins this election. Yes, sir.
Mr. Bannon.
My name is Joe DeBox. I'm with the America First Warehouse, part of Real America Boys. 1,392 days have been since Ashley Babbitt was shot and murdered at the Capitol. 820 days, Mickey Wickoff, Nicole Rappert sit outside the gulag next to the...
Can we get a question?
The question is this, sir. What can we tell them? Because now, 315 in jail, 314 today. What can we tell them to expect?
Here's what I think. If you look downrange for a second of President Trump's second term, that commences on January 20th. Look at what's going to happen. Number one, the debt ceiling. We hit the debt ceiling almost immediately. Number two, you have the expiration of President Trump's tax cuts. Number three, the government runs out of money December 20th. It looks like it's not going to be an omnibus. President Trump has to deal with a massive fiscal crisis, okay, economic and fiscal crisis. In addition, you need to start to do what Kamala Harris failed to do. That's the reason that African American men and Hispanic men are not voting for her and staying away, is that we have to begin the mass deportations of illegal alien criminals. That is in the first couple of weeks of the second term. There are many things that have to happen, and many investigations that should take place under the proper structure, apparatuses, and to be adjudicated. And that's going to take time. So I think it's not helpful to tell people this is all going to be done immediately. You have the House, you have the Judiciary Committee, you have the Inspector General's report that hasn't been released in the Attorney General's office. They also, I think, ought to have another J6 committee just like they had before, but this time, the Democrats should have a ranking member and they should have minority counsel. So all documents go to the minority counsel, all witnesses go to the minority counsel, people are cross-examined, and we do it in the right way. But I don't think that that's going to happen right in the box because we have such huge financial, well, the reality is we have huge financial and sovereignty issues about what's happened to the borders of this country and what's happening to internally in this country. This is why Hispanics are almost at 50-50 with President Trump. This is why African American men and Hispanic men are not voting for the politics of joy. They see their lives right now are not about the politics of joy. They're about a brutal reality in this country. So I think we have to be very upfront with people of what's facing us and what President Trump and his administration are going to face. And to the degree that we get to those investigations, which we will, it has to be done over time, it has to be done properly, and it has to be done so that the American people see that this was not partisan. That this is not to send Peter Navarro to prison, or not indict President Trump or former president 92 times, okay? Or not to send a guy like Steve Bannon that disagrees with you politically to prison. It has to be done in the right way.
Mr. Bannon,
Yes,
Bernadette Hogan from New York One. You call yourself a political prisoner. If so, why do you think that you were released then, a week before the election? Also, we're in New York. Trump just had a rally at MSG. You said you spent time with Puerto Rican men while in prison.